In a book of meditations called Breaking and Blessing, the Reverend Sean Parker Dennison writes a letter on behalf of our better angels. And the letter goes like this. Dear one, we have received your letter, and we hate to tell you, not hate so much, but are a bit afraid to say, we cannot grant your requests as stated, but can only remind you of familiar things. First, faith. Faith in yourself and trust in others. We know it can be terrifying to be vulnerable, but only when you share your softest side will we be able to break through. Next, hope. Hope is not an empty fairy tale. It is the true story of all the times human beings like you have found a way to create the future, though you didn't know how. And of course, love. Love that demands you cherish all people. Love that is not satisfied until every argument ends abruptly when one says that hurts. There is so much to learn and relearn. The world teaches you to be hard, to negotiate and defend, to avoid giving too much and to the wrong people. There are no wrong people. You also are not wrong. And when you encounter the poor, the broken, the unhoused, and the unwelcome, you are looking, if you pay attention, at us, calling you to answer your own prayers. If you want to change the world, first be sure you are changing yourself. Be tender, be kind, be at peace, be all the things you wish for. Be your own better self. It isn't without cost, but it will be free. There's so much I wonder about this letter. First and foremost, I wonder what that original letter to our better angels was all about. What were the requests that could not be granted? What was being asked of them? I would like to hazard a guess that those requests might be coming from a place of supplication over unwanted changes in a life, or about changes that needed to be made in a life that someone didn't want to make. The letter comes from our better angels. And I think it is safe to say that Sean is not talking about celestial winged beings. He's writing a letter from our better selves, the people we hope we will be when necessary, the people who know how true it is that if we want to change the world, we must be sure we are changing ourselves. The Reverend Jen Crow, senior minister at First Universalist in Minneapolis, tells the story of a woman she knew whose greeting, rather than hello or nice to see you, was, if you're not changing, you're dying. And after that, she might add, living things change, dead things don't. If you're not changing, you're dying. She's not wrong. Living things change, dead things don't. Change is undeniable. It is inevitable. It is as much a part of being human as breathing. We can't stop it, and we may not always see it coming. Yet we often resist it and fight against it as much as we can. Think about the many changes you've experienced just in the past 2.5 years. Think only of grocery shopping and how those rules were constantly shifting. At one point, you may have gone from a rather ordinary activity that didn't take much thought to learning how to shop online and have food delivered, or learning out what curbside pickup means, to then shopping with arrows on the floor, avoiding aisles that already had another shopper, to a gradual return to something that may once again feel rather ordinary. And that is one small aspect of our lives. So much has changed, and it continues to change every day. Earlier this month, we went to the polls for another election day. You may have been happy with the outcome. You may have been disappointed with the outcome. You may be feeling hopeful. You may be completely dispirited. But we know whenever we go to the polls, whatever the outcome is, changes are going to come again. And on top of all that is happening in our world, there's the constant changes in our personal lives. Now, how many of you have had a significant change in your life? Let's just say perhaps in the last year. Right? Look around, it's many of us. So I've had several, some of which I have known were coming and needed to have happen for more than a decade, and changes that I never would have expected or wanted. You would think that by now we'd be so used to it. Change as a universal truth that we recognize and anticipate at any moment. How many of us said 2021 is going to be a better year? Okay, 2022, here we come. This is it. This is our year. How many of us are just sliding into 2023 hoping no one notices? Right? Change is hard. So let's be honest, even changes that we choose can cause anxiety, resistance, fear, fatigue, discomfort, uncertainty, and doubt. Change can wear us down and throw us deeply off balance. It can make us feel as if we're lost in the wilderness. In the letter from our better angels, there were 3 suggestions to working with change, 3 reminders to us from our own better selves to remember faith, hope, and love. So BJ Miller is the executive director of the Zen Hospice Project in San Francisco. When BJ was in college, a freak electrical accident with a stationary commuter train left him without one arm and both legs. In that moment, life as he knew it was over and everything changed. He has this to say. There was an intuitive piece of coming to grips with this, and there was a long period of trying to make sense of things. I was trying to process it all and reframe myself, and I realized I needed to reframe my relationship to the world around me so that I could fit into it again. I remember asking myself, I've lost 3 body parts. Does that make me less of a person? By volume, yes, but not in any other way. What I came to realize, he says, is that we need to come to terms with all we do not control. There's a big difference between things that you choose to do and those things that happen to you, that are the result of forces larger than you. I can yield to Mother Nature. I can yield to the 11,000 volts that shot through my body, causing my injuries. There's a way we need to acknowledge that there are always going to be forces outside of our control and a sense of bowing down before them. Yet it doesn't mean that you are nothing in this equation. You may be a drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things, but the bucket would be different without your drop in it. There's a challenge for us in this. We have a capacity as human beings to change ourselves and change things around us. The challenge is to know which pieces are ours to change and to decide how we will respond to the ones that aren't. There are moments in this life that will be out of our control. There will be changes in our lives that we do not want, and we will try to push them away with everything we have. So much of this life is out of our control. After the past 2 years, we know this in our bones to be true. We have no idea what tomorrow or next year or the coming year will bring. This is where faith enters the equation. Faith in yourself and trust in others. When changes arrive at your door, whether ones you choose or ones that have arrived unannounced, what we can control is how we greet them, how we invite them in, how we respond to their presence in our lives, believing in ourselves and our ability to adapt, to grow, to be transformed in some way by this new arrival. B.J. Miller said it beautifully. When change arrives, there's a reworking and there's pain, and it is an ongoing process. Yet we humans can do this beautifully with creativity. We can believe in what is ours to do so that at the end of our days, we will be able to say that death is what takes us, not a lack of imagination. So I think back to our story of the Frog Prince and how he must have longed for change, how hard it must have been for him to hold on to hope. And those better angels, they said, hope is not an empty fairy tale. It is the true story of all the times human beings like you have found a way to create the future, though you didn't know how. Buddhism has a teaching that's called wise hope, and I think it's helpful as we consider change. Wise hope is learning to see things as they are, seeing the reality of a situation and not turning away, not pushing it away, not resisting or fighting, but seeing how we can transform and be transformed by it. Our frog needed transformation, a change back into who he truly was. And he found a way, though he didn't know quite how it was going to happen, he found a way to create a different future. Wise hope is unprescribed. It is spontaneous. It is not attached to an outcome. It is a response of the imagination to the realities of this life and all that it entails. It's the courage to hold on to possibility in the face of constant change. Letting go of what we cannot control. Faith that we can creatively work with what we can. Hope that we will find a way through the wilderness into the new. So much of this is grounded in the last reminder from the angels to remember the power of love. Since I was here with you last spring, there's been a change in my own family, with my father recently receiving a cancer diagnosis. It's a change we do not want to welcome in. It's a change in his health that we wish was different. I'm grateful for the treatment he's receiving, that he's handling it well. He's in really good spirits, yet a change like that truly puts things into a different perspective. The poet Christopher Wiseman wrote a poem that I have been reading quite a bit recently. It's called Bedside Manners. How little the dying seem to need. A drink, perhaps, a little food, a smile, a hand to hold, medication, a change of clothes, an unspoken understanding about what's happening. You think it would be more, much more, something more difficult for us to help with in this great disruption. But perhaps it's because as the huge shape rears up higher and darker each hour, they are anxious that we should see it too. And they try to show us with a hand squeeze. We panic to do more for them, and especially when it's your father and his eyes are far away and your tears are all down your face and your clothes and he doesn't see them now, but smiles. Perhaps because you're there. How little he needs. Just love, more love. There is so much clarity that arrives in these moments of perhaps our greatest change, the transition from life to death. Amid the changes of all of these days, it's what I am trying to remember. Letting go of what I cannot control. Putting faith in doctors and nurses and treatment plans and the resiliency of my dad. Hoping for creative answers to very complicated questions. Staying with the pain of it all and shaping myself in relationship to this change that I would not choose. And remembering that what he needs now is love, just love. We know that we resist and we struggle with change because letting go of what we know is difficult work. Letting go of what we love is painful. Living in the wilderness is unstable. When change arrives, we are no longer who we were, but we are not yet who we will become. There's a waiting, an absence, a disorientation. We want to rush through this time. Yet it is here in this time of being lost where we can experience the renewal necessary to begin again. Times of change can be times of discovery and creativity, learning, integration, healing, wholeness. Working with the changes that come into our lives can be seen as holy, sacred work. In the parable of the sower, Octavia Butler wrote, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change." Now, that language may not work for you, but the underlying sentiment is one that I hope you can translate into a language that does work and that you can become curious about. Because despite how disorienting and painful and difficult change can be, it can also be holy. Octavia Butler also wrote, "God exists to be shaped." And what I love about that statement is the power within it when you put the two pieces together. If God is change and God exists to be shaped, change exists to be shaped. We can work with shaping the changes we choose to make, and we can shape ourselves in relationship to the changes we do not make, to the ones we would not choose. Friends, we're not the people we were 10 years ago, 10 months ago, maybe even 10 minutes ago. We are always changing in ways that are small and large. So as we move forward into our days and we continue to change and the world continues to change around us, may we remember, if you want to change the world, first be sure you are changing yourself. Be tender, be kind, be at peace, be all the things you wish for. Be your own better self. It isn't without cost, but it will be free.